I'm curious, like, before Hoop, what your workflow was like, and how much time do you think Hoop is saving you today?
I would say by default, probably like most people, I use notes on my iPhone all the time to just jot down a to-do list. I'm not a really big paper person, so it's always like some kind of to-do list, right? That I was always created, but it was always dependent upon me recognizing the to-do and then capturing it.
Hi, I'm Stella Garber, and I am the co founder and CEO of Hoop, new AI task manager that automatically captures tasks across tools like Slack, email, and meetings. And I have got Josh Whitfield with me here today. Josh, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Stella. So Josh Whitfield, I'm the founder of Content Marketing Media. We're an email agency that supports about 25 clients around the world.
And what is a typical day like for you, Josh?
Oh, it's hard to describe it still. It messages from clients every morning, every day in Slack to WhatsApp to a whole bunch of emails to 5 to 10 meetings a day. So, and that's just work, right? You have your personal stuff too, right? So LinkedIn is a big driver of our business too. So it's kind of a mess, but it's a lot better thanks to Hoot, to be honest with you. So.
Well, so how do you manage everything? So you've got clients messaging you, and I'm assuming every client has like a different way of how they want to talk to you. As you're managing all of this complexity, what are some of your workflows and tools that you're using to help you with that?
Yeah, so I mean, probably like most people, and it's interesting because I used to work in the corporate world, and so everything was like call scheduled, show up to a meeting, right? And then in the world I'm in today, you still have your typical flows of meetings that are scheduled via Zoom or calls that are scheduled, right? So that's pretty straightforward with Hoop because it comes into the calendar flow and I can see all that. I have my team because a lot of those are sales calls. I have my team go in advance and actually do a little research on leads, especially if they're a sales call, and they load that information into a Google Doc and put that underneath the actual task in Hoop, which makes it easier. So I can be prepared in advance of the call I'm about to go on and look at that, and so that's how they manage kind of the more formal structured calls. But, today more than anything is just the real-time communication, right? So from Slack, for every client, we have a Slack channel that is connected as well to Hoop. And so it's nice because in some instances when I'm not on a call, I can address those right away. But a lot of the times I can't, right? So if my team is not able to address that, all of those come into Hoop as a to-do for me. And then I'm able to, I call it like my triage, where I can go through really quickly and go, okay, these are things that maybe I addressed through another channel, right? Because they also sent an email, or these are things I need to do. So we have our Hoop set up and basically like I call it to do, really simple, right? A to do flow, a flow of things that are more long term to do. And then I also have the meeting section of upcoming meetings, and those are where those meetings are put in. And then I also have follow-ups to meetings that I have to do. And so from those follow-ups with the tagging in Hoop, I have every task that's in a given section in Hoop is tagged to either a particular client or is either tagged to urgent with the fire emoji, right? And then, I even built a workflow from Hoop to Zapier where I can push the to-dos and drive them to schedule time on my calendar, right? So to block out time. So I do have to go in there and choose what time, but it just makes it that much easier because I find like if I don't schedule it, unless it's something really, really easy to do, that it doesn't get done. Right. So I kind of slot those in between different times on my calendar. But it's really nice because especially now, like with the email integration, it just has become that much easier because I always felt like I was kind of missing that. I would get my Slack, I would get my calendar, but then, there's still a subset of customers or things that come through my email every day. And I have my team, it would be perfectly autonomous on its own, but having my team kind of integrated into that process just makes it that much easier because they get better at prioritizing within Hoop, like what I need to focus first. So we have that Kanban approach today, and much like agile methodology, you still have what you need to work on first and what you need to work on last. And so it's really completely revolutionized how we do things or how I do things because it just flows with how things flows, right? Like you get Slack messages, you capture it. You get an email, you capture it. You have a call, you capture it. And then I think probably even more importantly is you get like my meetings are where the magic happens, right? Where I'm trying to close a deal with a client, where a client has a concern or something and I need to address. So outside of just all those other things I've described, as I'm having those discussions, I don't have to stress about, you know, whether or not I take notes. I was just on a call an hour ago and it's for a new client, a large client, and they're like, can somebody capture these to-dos? And I'm like, don't worry, I got it covered because I know it's going to be there and it always is. So very dependent at this point, like a third leg or a third arm. I don't know that I could live without it.
That's great. I mean, that's great for us to hear. I'm curious, like before Hoop, what your workflow was like and how much time do you think Hoop is saving you today?
You know, I don't know. I should probably do a time study to understand that. I know that like I've tried everything, right? Like I would say by default, probably like most people, I use notes on my iPhone all the time to just jot down a to-do list. I'm not a really big paper person. So it's always like some kind of to-do list that I was always created, but it was always dependent upon me recognizing the to-do and then capturing it. And then even that, like cutting and pasting, the third thing on the list and making it first, right? I tried like whatever the task capability is built in with the iPhone because, I always have my iPhone no matter where I'm at, regardless if I'm in front of my computer. I probably tried, I don't know, every app that's ever existed on the App Store for to dos to do it and, what all the other ones, right? And I could never find a reason or desire or just it was too cumbersome to be consistent. It never addressed the way communication came in, right?
Mhm.
Because like,
Yeah.
just because you have a great to-do list doesn't mean that that helps you solve the problem of capturing something that needs to be done when you're on a call. Like, or like you and I are having this conversation now. The reality is, in the last 10 minutes, something has happened in one of those other channels that I need to be aware of that I would have to go find and figure out and then capture versus being a capture for me. I mean, so I would say easily an hour a day to answer your question, probably much more, but I think time is not as relative to me as probably potential revenue or real time ability to live up to the promises that I made or make for our customers and provide service because we're in an always on world and you can't always be on. But if you have the ability to, like most people today, they don't expect you to answer like maybe your significant other, sure you should answer that text message as soon as possible. But in business, I don't think people expect you to drop what you're doing and respond in 5 minutes, but they do expect you to respond,
Right.
right? And when you have multi-channel, that can become really, really hard unless you're organized, right? And I think that's where I'm sure my time is very important and I've saved a lot of time, but I think probably more than anything, I've been able to live up to my commitments, which in the long term, I think is much more valuable than maybe having an extra 15 minutes a day.
Awesome. I'm curious what you're talking about staying organized. Are there any productivity philosophies or approaches that have helped you as you're growing your agency?
Probably like you. I mean, we're founders, so we work way too much anyway. So that's a habit I got to break regardless. But I mean, just the idea of, I think visualization matters. Like just being able to see, putting it in front of you and really understanding. I've tried it all. I've even been taught, like, I used to be a product manager, right? So I'm professionally trained in agile and time management certified, right? And all that did not get me away from the fact of like you still have stuff to do and you need to keep track of what you have to do. But, even learning somewhat in the agile mentality, like visualizing what you have to do does make a difference, right? Getting consensus around it. And so I feel like that's really been a huge advantage is it's no longer like 20 things in an Apple node. It's more of, okay, this is what needs to be done where, how, and then because at the end of the day, you only have so much time,
Totally.
right? Like, even if you work too much, you still only have you have to sleep at some point, you have to eat at some point, you have to pay the mortgage at some point. So, you still only have so much time. And I think allocating and deciding, like, am I going to drop 2 hours on this project or do I need to be here or should I get off the computer and spend time with my kids? Those are all things that are fundamentally important.
Hmm.
But seeing that and visualizing it makes a huge difference versus just 10 things on a list and like, okay, what do I work on now? It's a whole different mentality.
Yeah, I think that I've always been a very visual person as well, which is, if it's not written down somewhere or if I can't see it, then it becomes very difficult to make an informed decision about like how you spend your time.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for folks who are starting to use Hoop or considering productivity tools, especially with AI, such a big productivity sort of buzzword these days?
Yeah, I would say number 1, consistency is the number 1 thing. As much as I love hoop, there's times where I'm like, it's 7 o'clock and I'm not gonna go in there and organize my task, and I regret it the next day. Luckily, I don't have to do it. There's not much organization I have to do, but there's always still prioritization, regardless of whether you have to do organizations. I think number 1 is consistency. It's like anything else in life. If you exercise a lot, then you're gonna be healthy. If you eat well, then you're gonna be healthy. If you organize your day, you're probably gonna be healthy too, because you're just gonna be in much better control and get done the things you want. So I believe in consistency. And then I think start small. Even if you just like, not everybody uses Slack, right? So maybe if all you do is get a better understanding of the things that are happening to your day through your conversations, and you're able to follow up on the things that you say you're going to do on a phone call, that is going to be a baby step towards better productivity and better customer relationships. And then the next thing you know, now you're like, okay, well, I'm going to make sure we're monitoring all our Slack channels. So, AI is a huge component of that. And the AI is good, right? Like I think the world thinks that, the early versions of Chat GPT is what AI is. And it's not that if you're using Hoop or the right products, right? It's contextually strong and only getting better. So, like, just trusting is probably I mean, uh, like trusting a tool to tell me what I need to do into relation to a client who pays me and feeds my family requires a lot of trust. Yet I do. So that should tell you something, right?
Yeah, that's great. We definitely appreciate that. Any favorite features you'd want to share to help other folks?
I really like self-service automation. Starting off with the Zapier integration. When you open your world to Zapier, you're opening your tool to anything that it can be connected to. Not everybody has time to build these automations. You can't expect any tool to connect to everything. We all use so many different things. Tools like Zapier, they give you the ability to integrate out into the broader universe. And so that's what's cool because, like if you're using another communication medium or something else or a different tool outside of Google or vice versa, then you're not limited, right? And that's my favorite feature. And I'm actually extremely fond of the email because that's still probably the number one way of communication. And that's been a huge enhancement too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Josh. We really appreciate it.